Alright guys, before we get into the podcast, let's get through the rigmarole first. Guys, this podcast posts each and every single Wednesday. The first segment of the show, we go through all the Dolphins news you need to know about. The second segment of the show, we go through the Miami Dolphins mock draft. The third segment of the show, we preview game day. And the fourth and final segment of the show, we go through the Miami Dolphins fan Q&A where we answer fans' questions. This first news story, Dolphins claim tight end A.J. Derby. The Dolphins have claimed tight end A.J. Derby off waiver wires, according to Field Yates of ESPN.com. Derby was cut by the Broncos on Tuesday, putting him on the waiver wire for the other 31 NFL teams. Derby, 26, was traded from the Patriots to the Broncos last season in exchange for a fifth-round pick. He was in the midst of a quietly productive year and was leading Denver's tight ends in receptions before he was released in November. In 9 games, 1 start, Derby had 19 catches for 244 yards and 2 touchdowns. So this is a very interesting signing because of the tight end situation here. I would expect to see him, I don't know, AJ, when you watch him, first of all, he barely played and had over 200 yards receiving and 2 touchdowns. Obviously his best game came against the Raiders, and he was a big part of that hot start for the Denver Broncos, who have struggled to really find a tight end. But when he was around, he was very productive. And when they actually, called his number and utilized the tight ends, he was obviously very effective. I think the reason he was probably because he can't block very well. And obviously in that Denver offense, you need kind of a two-way tight end to be successful in that kind of a bootleg power running style that Denver has ran pretty much ever since Gary Kubiak was there. So, it is what it is, but I feel like he can actually provide us with some spark or some oomph, hopefully down the line. Who knows, we might not see him, but he definitely is one of the more higher-end players you could have ever really have gotten at this point in the year off of the waiver wire. And he might contribute to, hopefully, a late, strong run by this football team. So it's going to be very interesting to see here. This next news story, can the Dolphins run the table the rest of the season? This is an article from the Fin Fanatic that we're going to go through. I thought it would be cool to kind of go through what we're going to be facing. If Miami does in fact run the table for the remainder of the regular season, it would put their record at 9-7. That would not all guarantee them a playoff spot. However, to be honest, even if the Dolphins were to put this run together, chances they would still be out of the playoff picture. As it stands, Miami's at 5-7. Is 2 games behind the playoff spot holder Baltimore at 7-5. Keep in mind that the Ravens hold the head-to-head advantage over Miami as well if by the chance there is a tie. The Ravens will be at the Steelers next weekend, but they have a favorable schedule from then on. The Jaguars are 8-4, hold their wildcard spot at the moment as they continue their battle with the Titans, who are also 8-4 for the AFC South showdown. Those teams will meet in the regular season finale, but it would be hard for Miami to catch either of them at this point. The Dolphins also have the Chargers, Bills, Raiders, Bengals, and Jets sitting between them. So a lot would need to happen for Miami to have any chance at the playoffs. The likelihood of Miami reaching the postseason for a second consecutive season may be slim, but it would mean a lot if they found a way to win out and finish above 500. The Dolphins have been through a lot this season, on and off the field. The idea of them finishing with a winning record through all of that would still be quite the accomplishment. It might hurt their draft stock for 2018, but it's momentum that could carry them into next season. It may even land them some key free agents that see Miami can handle adversity and they can right a wrong ship despite all the obstacles. So very interesting. Obviously, a lot would have to go on our way, but it really doesn't even matter if we make the playoffs, in my opinion. This team is not built for a deep playoff run either way. So even if we did get in, it would, our chances of winning one, we could win one, because I still think, out of the 6 AFC teams that are in right now, there's a possibility that we could beat not any of them, maybe not the Steelers and the Patriots in a playoff scenario, but those other teams I think we could beat. I think we do have the talent to do that. But so if we just finish strong, I think that alone, for at least Dolphins fans especially, would be enough as opposed to even getting into the playoffs. So it doesn't even matter if we get into the playoffs. I just want to finish strong. And I think it would mean a lot to the fan base, especially if Adam Gase finished with 2 consecutive, as his first 2 years here, 2 consecutive winning seasons. I think that would mean a lot to the organization and the culture here. And I think it would mean a lot to the team, especially going into next season. You got to understand, the players are people too. And it's hard to listen to somebody as a head coach. I'm not talking about Adam Gase. I'm just talking about in general. It's hard to listen and, follow the lead of somebody who probably, like a good example of Joe Philbin, who isn't a winner. That's why when everybody goes up to New England, they understand what Bill's pedigree is. It's basically a folk tale at this point because of how much success they've had. So they listen to anything and everything that they say because they know what they're getting into when they get down here. So building a culture and building this winning mentality here in Miami is very important. So that would obviously help if we finished with a second consecutive season with a winning record. So again, there's a lot to still, cheer for at this point. And a lot of people want to tank and get a high pick. We don't really need a top 5 pick. That won't change our team. The needs that we need are very minor, to be honest with you. We need a guard. Okay, we don't need a top 5 pick to get a guard. We don't need a safety, so we don't need somebody like Derwin James. We can get a receiver in the 2nd to 3rd round who could be a productive guy or at least compete with Devontae Parker, so we really don't need that. So really our biggest needs are offensive linemen. I think hopefully in his second year, Charles Harris kind of develops a little bit more. We could look at a pass rusher in later rounds. We're going to get into the mock draft here in a second, but it's not like we need a high-end piece to build around for the next 20 or 10 to 15 years. We're not that kind of a football team. We just need some minor things that do not require a top 5 pick. So, draft stock doesn't matter, in at least my estimation. All right, this next news story, Dolphins tight end Julius Thomas quietly puts up some respectable numbers. This, again, most of these are more of articles than news stories, but this is very interesting. Move past the visuals of Dolphins tight end Julius Thomas celebrating a touchdown against the Denver Broncos by riding on a football as though it was a Bronco. Also move past the visual of Thomas taking a knee during the national anthem to protest social injustice to minorities. Then asked Dolphins head coach whether Thomas is one of Gase's favorites, is having a good year. Adam said, quote, I see it definitely than it seems like everybody else does, said Gase, who believes Thomas hasn't been who believes Thomas hasn't been a bigger factor because the Dolphins haven't had favorable matchups. Quote, he's done everything I've asked him to do. Thomas, the 29-year-old 7th-year player, doesn't seem to pass the eye test at first glance. But he's the Dolphins' 3rd leading receiver with 37 receptions, one more than wide receiver Devontae Parker. Thomas has 362 receiving yards, 4th on the team, just 52 behind Devontae Parker. Thomas's 3 touchdowns are tied for 2nd on the team behind wide receiver Jarvis Landry and Kenny Stills, who each have 6, and alongside running back Kenyon Drake. Thomas won't come near the career best he established in 2013 with Denver with 65 receptions for 788 yards and 12 touchdowns, but he could threaten the 2nd best number of his career with 46 receptions he had with Jacksonville in 2015. The 489 receiving yard he had with Denver in 2014 and 5 touchdowns he had with Jacksonville in 2015. So basically, let's go through some more numbers before we move on. Thomas averaged 12.1 yards per reception in 2013 and 11.4 yards per reception in 2014. He's averaging 9.8 yards per reception this year, which is 3rd on the Dolphins behind Kenny and Devontae, which Kenny averages 15 yards a catch, and Devontae averages 11.5 a catch. So you kind of get an idea of, first of all, here's what I want to say, and I don't think this is a compliment to Julius Thomas. Because I've seen Adam Gase turn literally somebody he took off the street in Zach Miller and just completely turn his career around. He really gave him a blueprint to have success in the league, even without him. And they obviously still kind of run very similar things to what Adam Gase did down there before, and they still utilize him in that way, and they still utilize their tight ends that way in Chicago. But he literally took somebody who didn't play in the NFL at the tight end position for an entire year and literally had a Pro Bowl season with him. So Julius Thomas is just another key because, again, tight ends they're going to get a lot of looks. They're going to get a lot of targets. They're going to get a lot of all of that stuff in an Adam Gase offense. So Julius is still a big-bodied guy. He's still got great hands. He's still a good 50-50 ball guy as well. He does not have the speed and quickness to be an elite tight end in this league. He doesn't have the straight line speed at all to be a great tight end in this league. He's just not the same player he used to be. He's a smart player. He's an effective, route runner at times, but he's not the athlete that he used to be. And obviously that's hurt our football team in many different scenarios, especially in run after the catch situations, where he's caught a ball where he could probably, if he were faster, pick up the first down. So yeah, Julius Thomas, just because he's putting up okay numbers, not only has he been a disappointment, but it is, again, Adam Gase made Dominique Jones and Marquise Gray look really good last year. He's made Zach Miller look like a Pro Bowl tight end. That's just the nature of his offense more than it is the talent. So this Dolphins team still needs a tight end, regardless. Julius Thomas is definitely not the future, and he's definitely not the present at this point either. So yeah. So let's move into the Miami Dolphins mock draft. And this is very interesting stuff. So we're going to go through all the picks up until the Dolphins pick, and this mock draft is by Bleacher Report if you guys want to go check this out. I think they had the last mock draft we did, I think they had us selecting the linebacker out of Georgia, who I cannot remember right now. But you guys, I'm sure you guys know his name. His name is escaping me right now. It's hard to keep up with all the NFL names and the college names. It's very, very difficult. Cleveland Browns select Josh Rosen with the first overall pick. The second overall pick, the New York Giants selected Baker Mayfield. That'd be insane if you went number 2 overall. The third overall pick, the San Francisco 49ers select Saquon Barkley. With the fourth pick, the Denver Broncos select safety Derwin James. With the fifth pick, the Colts select Quentin Nelson, offensive guard Notre Dame, which is probably the guy that I want the most. Number 6 overall, Chicago Bears select Minkah Fitzpatrick, free safety, Alabama, and I know I said his name wrong. Cleveland Browns, with their 7th overall pick, select Denzel Ward, corner out of Ohio State. With the 8th overall pick, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers select Arden Key, defensive end, LSU. The Arizona Cardinals select quarterback Sam Darnold out of USC. If he drops to number 9 and somebody takes Baker Mayfield over Sam Darnold, first of all, the Cardinals would get an absolute steal. That would be crazy. I don't think the Jets have selected. Well, no, they haven't selected yet. Okay, so next up, number 10, the New York Jets select Orlando Brown, offensive tackle, Oklahoma. Just 2 picks before us. That would be crazy if that happened. The Washington Redskins select Raekwon Smith. That's his name. Or not Roquan. I think it's Roquan Smith, linebacker, Georgia, who they had us selecting in the last mock draft. But we've moved down from, I think, the 8th spot to the 12th spot. And then they had, okay, so this is our pick. With the 12th pick overall, the Miami Dolphins select Bradley Chubb, defensive end, NC State. So yeah, a lot of people, I think, I wouldn't mind that pick. It's not like we need a defensive lineman, but you can never have enough of them. And I think at that point, hang on a second. At that point, he might actually be the best player available. You can make an argument for preference and stuff, but he is a talented guy, and I think when you look at him, he's an explosive athlete. So that's not a bad pick, but it's not a big need, especially considering, I guess, since Quentin Nelson was drafted, and then you got, see here, when was, the Jets took Orlando Brown. So it's not a terrible pick. And again, when the top 2 offensive linemen are off the draft at that point, I guess you do have to go with the best player available. And again, that's very subjective to who you think at that point would have been the best player available. So very interesting stuff. Very interesting mock draft, seeing how they have Sam Darnold dropping all the way to the 9th pick overall, which there's no way on this planet Earth. The Browns would feel stupid if they could have got Sam Darnold with the 7th pick and then selected the best player they thought available with the first overall pick, like a Derwin James or something like that. So very interesting stuff. With the mock draft there, and very interesting stuff with the news and the future of the franchise. I'm very excited because I think this team's finally getting a groove on. And, Adam Gase since he's been here, I mean, the team has really performed at their best in November and December. So the team didn't have a very good November at all, a very bad November, but they can have a really strong finish in December. And last year, if there's any indication that he gets this team ready for playoff football, if we had a really good December last season. We didn't finish very strong. But we had one of the better games that we've had, and one of the biggest wins we've had in this franchise in the last 10 years at that point. Or would have been 10 years, I guess 9 years, to get us into the playoffs. So yeah, it was I think he's gonna have this team rolling. Especially if we beat the Patriots on Monday Night Football, mark my words, we're finishing 9-7, because I think this team will be on a hot streak, and they've got some very, very cold teams ahead of them. Obviously, two out of our last three, we have the Bills and then the Chiefs. So the Bills, I think, probably be the Bills on the road would be the toughest matchup out of all of those. So I think if we can get the ball rolling, if we beat New England on Monday night, I think this team's going to be on one heck of a roll, and we might actually finish 9-7. I think that's our best shot. Obviously, if we lose against New England, that goes out the window. But New England's our toughest game. And obviously we play them tough at home, and that is going to bring us into previewing the New England Patriots game. When you look at this team, and especially on offense, let's start with the offense. When you look at the Patriots, and we have a lot of success throwing the football, our pass blocking last time, especially in the first half, was really good. And a lot of that had to do with they weren't sending any blitzes at all. They really only sent 4-man rushes. It wasn't anything exotic or crazy. In the second half, Bill really adjusted and then took it to us in that second half. So whatever adjustments Matt and Bill did, Matt Patricia, the defensive coordinator, it really hurt us. And that's something we've struggled all year is communication on both sides of the football, offense and defense. That's why one of the reasons I think we've played really well at home. Way better at home on the offensive side of the football. I think our average is something like 24 points. That was before we played Denver. It was like 24 points a game on offense or something crazy like that. And obviously on the road it's way worse. But I think playing at home allows us to communicate a lot easier because it's obviously quiet. And we can get our adjustments down, our pass protections out. But that's something that this team has struggled with on the road all year long is communication. Blitz pickups have been very poor, and that really hurt us in that second half, giving up 6 sacks. And most of them were on, either A-gap blitzes or a corner coming off the edge there, and really weren't picked up. And, that's all obviously on the offensive line. But if you send like a 4-man rush, I really have confidence in this offensive line, depending on who's on it, that they can do a very, very good job. And I think they're one of the better pass blocking teams in the NFL when 100% healthy. And Jesse Davis is playing like a real, like he's coming together. And and again, it doesn't surprise you because he's a younger player. I think he's really just starting to get it towards the end of the season. But he's really, really impressive. So pass protection is going to be a huge, 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 huge thing in this game. And I think it'll be a whole lot better since we are at home. Communication on the offensive line, getting the pass protections out, all that stuff is going to be better, and which should help us in this game a lot. But I think we did a great job. Jarvis always has great games against New England. We always our receivers do very well against them in man-to-man coverage. At times they've struggled, against press coverage this season, but I love, Adam always has a nice game plan for them on offense. Even when he was with Denver, his game plan, I mean, they beat New England. I think they beat him in the AFC Championship game. So Adams always had a good game plan against that type of a defense. And obviously that defense loves to play man-to-man because they like their secondary. Obviously the strongest suit to that team with Malcolm Butler and Stephon Gilmore. So the passing game is going to be huge in this game. It has been every other time we've beat them in New England, other than the one time Sean Moreno went off. It had like 100-plus yards in that game where we actually blew New England out. But the passing game is going to be really just huge. It's going to be huge in this game. So pass protection is going to be a big part of it. Checking to the right protections. The fact that we're at home that's going to be a non-factor. If we do struggle with that's on the quarterback. not either checking to the right protections. I feel like the offensive line has enough experience on it to understand what he's talking about, and obviously the game plan and all that other stuff. So pass protections could be huge. The receiver is going to have to be very consistent in beating their man one-on-one. And one of the things that we really struggled with is hitting on the big play against New England. There was a couple times we had people open downfield, and I mean wide open, and Matt Moore just missed them. So capitalizing on players being open, and that's something in Denver we messed up on too. That we have a lot of opportunities throwing the ball downfield because we do have a lot of talent there. Even with Jarvis, people forget Jarvis is a 4.7 guy. He's not fast, but the man, if he's one-on-one with the corner, that's an intimidation factor right there. Jarvis is going to go and get that football. But we've missed a lot of deep throws this year, and it's very frustrating. So if there is somebody open, we have to capitalize on that. So, because, obviously touchdown opportunities are very few and far between. This defense is, for New England, is really getting their groove on, especially since it's, almost playoff time. But, one of the things that, and I talked about this before, their linebackers are, pretty slow. Their front seven, they don't have an elite pass rusher on it. So we can take advantage of that in the passing game, as long as we can pick up some of those blitz pickups. I don't care how good your offensive line is. If they can't pick up a blitz, they're going to struggle. Obviously, they're sending somebody they don't usually send, either a middle linebacker, an outside linebacker, or corner, or safety. So you have to be prepared for those kind of looks and take advantage of them. And obviously, when you play New England often, the running game is always going to be a huge part of it. And I think we can get the edge on this defense. But they don't really have that edge defender that they had in Dante Hightower, or Rob Ninkovich, or any of those players. Trey Flowers is a pretty good defensive end, but they don't have that speed on the outside that they usually have or Jamie Collins. So Kenyon can, we had a lot of success with those tosses, getting the edge against Denver, who have a lot of really good athletes on their football team. Obviously, New England's a better coach team, but I think we can get some advantages there in the running game. But the pass game is going to be the biggest vocal point of this game. We have to be very effective in the passing game. This is still the same New England team. Whether all this hoopla about New England changes and all that other stuff, and their scheme, all that other stuff. They're not allowing 300 passers anymore. That's still the same players on that field. Obviously, most of that was miscommunication and really trying to get used to playing with each other with Stephon Gilmore and Malcolm Butler. And that obviously comes with experience of playing each other. But it's still the same team that can't rush the passer, that don't have a lot of athletes on the front seven. Hopefully we can take advantage of some of that kind of stuff with our offense, because we have really, really good skill positions. Devontae Parker is going to have to step up huge in this game. Like I said, the pass game, I think, on offense is what's going to win us this game. And we have to be consistent, and we have to be effective on first and second down especially. We can't get third and longs against this football team. They're too smart. They don't give up third and longs all that often. We have to be aggressive, push the football down the field, and hopefully we have some success. Facing them, obviously, we faced them in the last 2 weeks, really. So it's going to be a fun game. It's going to be a great game on Monday night. But the pass game, in my opinion, is the vocal point of this offense and needs to get going. And they need to capitalize on big plays. We cannot continue to have missed opportunities. And obviously, penalties hurt us again. People look at that score and think, oh, they blew them out and they handled. No. Our offense just killed ourselves in that game. Costly turnovers, mental issues, mental mistakes. When you think about the pick in the red zone that would have made it a one possession game coming out of halftime. So many turnovers, sacks that did not need to be taken. And the one thing that New England struggled with, if you guys watch the Buffalo game, they struggle with mobile people within the pocket, people that can avoid a rush. And step up into the pocket or around the pocket, because their defensive line, again, they don't have a Lawrence Taylor on it. They don't have a Dante Hightower on it. They don't have that elite block-shedding defensive player that is just a goon. They really don't have that. So a mobile quarterback can evade that kind of a rush and stuff like that. Jay Cutler is not like Matt Moore, he's not going to make somebody miss and run for 10 yards like Tyrod Taylor can, but he can make you miss enough to throw the football away. And that's something that Jay Cutler has done very well since he's been a Dolphin, is evading the rush and throwing the football away. So that's going to come up huge in this game, not taking negative plays. Jay Cutler's just more of an athlete than Matt Moore is, so he can get around that kind of stuff. So that's going to help us in this game. And that's definitely going to help us, because I felt like Matt Moore in last game really hurt us with, 6 out of those sacks. some of them were his fault. Some of them he was blindsided, and some of them he just could not get rid of the football because, the guy was right in his face. But a lot of the time, he had time to throw the football away. Most of the time, he had time to see the rush and get rid of the football, and he just didn't do that. He held on to the football too long, and he wasn't mindful of, taking negative yardage because field position is so huge. And obviously, New England's offense is very potent, to say the least. You have to be able to score with them. You have to be able to score definitely over 20 points a game, or 20 points in the game to win. So the offense, again, the pass game is going to be huge. And my main points in this offense to win this game, my top 3 ones: pass protection, and I don't mean by just blocking well. I mean picking up the blitzes. That's going to be huge. Pass protection and not taking negative yardage go hand in hand. So Jay Cutler throwing the football away, when there's nothing there and he sees the rush coming, that's huge. That's going to be huge in this game. And again, that's something he's done well. Number 2, consistency. We have to consistently win one-on-one matchups on the outside, and when we do, that comes to number 3, capitalize. No turnovers in red zone situations or in scoring opportunities. Capitalize. Capitalize when there's somebody open. Hit him. Don't miss him. We can't have mental mistakes in this game, so capitalize. And, all of that stuff goes hand in hand. So as long as we don't beat ourselves in this game and we play some clean dang football, this is going to be a close game. So that is what it is. And the defensive side really gets me excited for a number of different reasons, really, because I really feel like this defense is coming together and gelling. I really do. I love our safeties. I love them to death. I think TJ is great. I think Rashad is great. I think Stephon Anthony is really stepping his game up, man. He's played better than Lawrence Timmons, and you've seen Lawrence Timmons' playing time slowly decrease because of that, and Stephon Anthony has really brought another element to this game, or to our defense, that's really helped us out. He really adds some, he's a better athlete than Lawrence Timmons is at in this point in time, and that allows us to use Lawrence Timmons and, use him as a situational guy more than a guy who we have to play for 3 downs, and that really helps out our defense and makes it better because of that. Because Lawrence he's not a bad player, but he's more of a run defender. He's more of a first and second down guy. He's obviously not a nickel linebacker, and Kiko's really proven not to be that kind of a guy either. And so we really have kind of solved a mystery on this defense, to have a consistent linebacker that plays consistently and that's athletic enough to be effective in pass coverage. So that's going to help us out. And obviously special teams is a huge deal in last game. But staying on the defense before we get to special teams. Bobby McCain, who I failed to mention in the Denver Broncos recap, had another worldly game. The man really had a great game. He was a big part of stopping Emmanuel Sanders, who he checked most of the game. And he just did a great job in coverage all day long. I don't think I can't really remember. But I want to say he really didn't even get targeted, Bobby McCain. So he's had listen, he needs to go to the Pro Bowl. That's how good of a season he's had. And I don't think anybody saw that coming. Obviously, picking off Tom Brady in Gillette Stadium, that was huge for him. A boost for his confidence. But, man, he is really a true number 1 slot corner. And not many NFL teams have that. And it's very hard to find that. He's been a great tackler in open space, which is something he struggled with his entire career. He's been overly aggressive at times. He's been very stupid at times. His intelligence has went way up, and he's really mixing his athleticism with his knowledge right now. And, he's really blossoming into a really good player. And he's a Pro Bowler in my mind. He's performed at that level. So that's going to help us out in coverage as well. I think Xavier is not in the same place he was 2 weeks ago either. I think he's coming off a great game. I think his confidence is building up. And I think this defense is really starting to gel together. And playing at home is going to help them with communication. And that's something that we struggled with, in the game that we just played against them, is communication. I mean, Brandon Cooks was wide open on, deep dig routes and deep in routes all night long because, Cordrea, obviously, there was a miscommunication whether it was man or zone, and that happened a lot. Cordrea thought it was zone. The rest of the defense was playing man. And if you look at that play specifically, everybody else was literally step for step with each other, locked up. If it wasn't for Cordrea not understanding what coverage it was, they don't convert that third down. And third down defense is huge. One of the things we failed at when we lost to them, and one of the reasons is we kept giving them extra opportunities because of the mental mistakes. Our defense played well. We just kept giving them extra opportunities, whether that we just played poorly on third down or we committed penalties on third down. And some of them were so ticky-tacky ridiculous calls. I mean, ridiculous calls. That if they called the game that way, I don't know why they didn't call the game that way when we were on offense, because there was, I mean, so many times where, there was pass interference on them that they didn't call. That was way worse than what they had done to us. So getting off the field on third down is huge, because this offense is really good, and their running game has been amazing for them all season long, really, especially now that's in November and December. But again, it's different when you're in a cold environment and you have your crowd into it. And same thing when they were up in Buffalo. It's different. When you're here down in Miami, when the night lights are on, it's a Monday night game. It's just a different feel, and it's a different thing. It's just a different ball game. When they come down here, it's just totally different. We play more consistent, we play better, and we played them tough when we went up there in Gillette Stadium. I felt like we did. We just hurt ourselves way too much against a very good team, and that team obviously took advantage of it, because they're not going to make the same mistakes. They're not going to turn the ball over. They're not a bad football team. They're not going to make mistakes, so you have to play your best. You can't make mistakes. You can't turn the ball over, and that's really the biggest thing going into this game. The weaknesses that the Patriots like to exploit and stuff of that nature, where they're like, okay, if you struggle against the run, then all that other stuff. If we can play consistent football, we've been dominant against the run. At times, we've been dominant against the pass. It's just all about being consistent. So we have a defense that can put it all together, that can play consistent football for 60 minutes. They can do it. And same thing with the offense. We've seen them do it. They can do it. It's just about playing consistent football for the entire game and not letting up. And that's something that we really have only seen a handful of times this season. And even in the Denver game, we killed them, but we could have killed them a whole lot worse if we didn't do stupid stuff like fumbling the football. Kenny Stills fumbling the football, I think we would have went on the 9 or 8 yard line, and then obviously the Justin Simmons interception when he had Kenyon Drake wide open on the left side of the field. I don't know how he didn't see him. So stuff like that we just can't do against New England. You throw a pick six against the team with Tom Brady on it and see what happens. I mean, you're just not going to win that game. So it's very difficult, and that's something that this team has struggled with, is just beating themselves. So if we don't do that in this game, if we don't miss on opportunities deep down the field, if we capitalize on turnovers and stuff of that nature, then I think we'll be all right. And again, I really like it where this defense is going. This defense is I mean, really. I really, really like where this defense is going. I really do. I think they're finally coming together. The loss of Will Hayes has really hurt us in the run defense department. So that's going to be an interesting thing, because C.J. Anderson a couple times popped a couple big runs there. If it wasn't for us getting up on the Broncos early and often, and they had to pass it more, especially when it was getting into the second half, that game might have been a little different. We dominated on both sides. Don't get me wrong. We really cleaned up some of those run fits in the running game. It's going to be interesting to see how Matt Burke handles that early on and at the end and towards the end of the football game, of how to handle the New England running game, whether he brings down Rashad in the box or TJ in the box, or whatever he decides to do. But again, it comes down to not making mistakes, not making mental errors, and especially on defense. There's so many things that can go wrong on the defensive side of the football, and most of that went wrong. Whether you talk about penalties that kept drives alive, or miscommunications on key downs, all of that was happening on a consistent basis last time we played these guys. So we just can't do that. We just can't do that against a very good football team in New England. So, it's going to be a fun game. Like I said, I'm excited to see Kenyon Drake for the rest of the season, especially. I mean, he's an otherworldly kind of a guy in terms of his talent. He's a great athlete. I mean, you imagine being 6'2" and run a 4.3 or a 4.4 40. For God's sakes, this man is just a freak athlete, man. I can't, he's a very exciting player, and he obviously has an opportunity to show us that he can be the running back for the next 10 years here in Miami. And I think he has the talent to do it. I really, really, really do. So, all right, let's get into the Miami Dolphins fan Q&A. All right, so this first question comes from Upper Echelon. He says, is Fade in the future of this team? So is Terrence Fade in the future plans of this football team? It's a great question, because he's not just a defensive lineman. He's a tremendous special teams talent. When you talk about rushing on special teams, whether it be punt coverage or kickoff coverage, or blocking a punt or blocking a kick, whatever it is, the man is a tremendous special teams player. He's a great athlete. When he's had opportunities to be a defensive lineman and, be either in the interior of the defensive line or add some girth on the outside, it's hit or miss. He's not I don't know. He's just not he could turn into that. He had a nice game against the Broncos, but I don't think he's a full-time starter. I think he's more rotationally at best. He's a more of a rotational guy. So I don't, unless the Dolphins, I could see him coming back solely because he's such a great special teams player. But that would be the only reason. But I would say it's very slim. It's very slim. But I guarantee you another team would pick him up in a heartbeat because of his talent. This next question comes from Upper Echelon. He says, should we draft another DT and cut Sue or Landry? Or should we draft Christian Kirk and cut Landry? No. Should we draft another DT and cut Sue or Landry? Or no. I honestly, and I still believe this, we should not cut Jarvis Landry. You know, people look at it this way, which is a very weird way, and it's subjective. You have your own opinions on it. Everybody has their own opinions on something. But my way of viewing the situation is you're losing a ton of production when you lose Jarvis Landry. You're losing such a big part of your offense, and so much of it flows through him. I dare you to find another slot receiver who can break 2 tackles. You know that play had Justin Simmons Justin Simmons. He's a great safety. The man's, in my opinion, one of the better young safeties in the league. Had him dead to rights. And it was like 3rd and I think 6 maybe, or maybe a little bit shorter than that. And obviously Jarvis Landry shakes the tackle and goes for the first down. Or when he catches a screen on 2nd and 10, he can make 8 yards out of it. That stuff is so valuable as an offense because now when you're in a 3rd and short situation, the entire playbook is open to you. And I don't think a lot of people understand that. But Jarvis, when you're like, okay, we should cut Jarvis. Well, you just cut half the almost so much of the production on offense. From a weekly basis and on a consistent basis. He's one of the more consistent players we've had here since he's been here. So when you say, okay, should we get rid of Jarvis Landry, unless you can replace that kind of production, then no, you shouldn't get rid of Jarvis Landry because it just doesn't make any sense. And that's how I view it. I just view it in you're cutting so much production. Everybody wants to pigeonhole him as this slot receiver, and it's like who cares if he's a dang slot receiver? I don't care what position the man plays. If you're productive at any of your positions, no matter what position, and you're productive and you're a game wrecker like Jarvis Landry is, what does it matter what position he plays, for God's sakes? People say, okay, from the slot, you can't take over a game like you can as an outside guy, like a Julio Jones or a Dez Bryant. My rebuttal to that is, have you seen Odell play? Have you seen Antonio Brown play? Have you seen Julio Jones play? You know what they do more than anybody else in the league? They move. They're versatile. They can go in the slot. They can go on the outside. They can play X or Z positions. They can do anything they want because they're great route runners. They know leverage. They're very talented. And that's the same thing with Jarvis. If I put him on the outside in a play-action pass, which is how many times have we seen that this season, where he's on the outside and it's one wide receiver set, that's the kind of thing that Jarvis can do. I think he's a versatile player. I think he can play in the slot. I think he can play on the outside. And he's so young. He has so much more good football ahead of him. And again, you're losing so much production from him that it just doesn't make any sense. And you're just adding another hole on the offense. I mean, that is, again, a very big part. I don't care. Listen, Devontae Parker, I'm almost at the point to say he is what he is at this point. If he has another season like this, and again, I've said this before, we can't count on him to be the long term, or to be that guy here week in and week out. So regardless, I think we should try to see if we can't get somebody in the draft to at least add some competition for that outside spot. So that's a whole different deal. But again, I think when you get rid of Jarvis, you're getting rid of a lot of production. And just an unworldly talent, and obviously he's had a historic start to his career. Nobody has caught this many passes in this short of a time, in this limited time that he's had in his career. So you're cutting a lot of production, man. If you get rid of Jarvis, the entire Sue thing, Sue, I would not mind letting go, but again, he's another guy that you're cutting a lot from. He gives us so much on defense, and he allows us to do so many things, especially in terms of from a play caller standpoint, that losing him would be a very big hit to this defense and a very big hole to fill. So I would if I had a choice to pick between the two, I would pick Jarvis, obviously because he's younger, and I think he can again is going to be a big part of this offense for years to come. This next question comes from Upper Echelon again. He says, "I didn't want." Excuse me. Never mind. We answered all those questions. This question comes from George. He says, "Skaggs, your take of Devontae Parker." I kind of just said it. At some point in an NFL player's career, no matter how much potential and no matter how much of a freak athlete that he is, or whoever in any profession, any professional athlete's career, you have to have a mentality to be great every single day at your job, to be a dominant at anything that you do. So when you see Devontae Parker not do those things, not have that killer instinct in him, not have that, everybody talks about the Michael Jordan competitive nature and the Kobe Bryant competitive nature, the Tom Brady competitive nature. Cameron Wake has that, and so does Sue, and so does Jarvis. They have that competitive nature to want and to strive to be the best of what they do. Devontae Parker does not have that. He just doesn't have it. I don't think he cares half the time. He just doesn't have it. I don't understand it. He just doesn't have the will to win like those guys do. That it takes to be consistent, whether it's the injuries, whether it's him not being able to recover from a bad game mentally. I don't know what it is, but maybe showing him that, hey, it's not that hard to go out and get somebody who can do your job better. We've invested in you, we've tried to develop you, and I think that's given him some comfort. Let's pull some of that comfort out from under him and say, hey, we're ready to move on, and this is your last season to prove yourself, and if you don't, then this is the next guy, or this is the guy that's going to take playing time for you until you figure it out. So I think it's going to take either and if he doesn't answer to the bell when it comes to competition, then he needs to go. Because we've tried everything at this point. Literally everything at this point. Everything at this point. We've instilled confidence in him. We've said nothing but positive things about him in the media. We've tried to keep and do everything that we can to help him along. And it just really hasn't helped. And it's unfortunate because I love Devontae Parker. I really, truly do. And I've stuck up for this man for years now. But at this point, you gotta look to the future. You've got to look for better alternatives at this point in time. Because I can't take this anymore. I mean, it's the most frustrating thing in the world. The kid, he has all the talent in the world. He literally can do anything he wants to do on the football field. He's 6'4". He ran a 4.3 40. He can jump like Superman, but he doesn't show up. When he's not on the field, he's injured. When he's on the field, he checks out mentally. We just need another alternative at this point. Just because you can't count on him. You just can't count on him until he proves otherwise. You just can't count on him. This next question comes from George. He says 2 questions, man. He says 1, is Kenyon Drake our man of the future? The only question I have with Kenyon Drake is, can he take the physical pounding that a franchise running back has to take, because he's going to get so many touches a game for a 16-game season, and even if you make the playoffs, it's even more. So say we make the playoffs, then we lose Kenyon Drake, and then we lose a huge part of our offense. That's an issue. That's a big issue, and that's a big issue all NFL teams have. We've seen it with Le'Veon Bell over the years. We've seen it with David Johnson this particular season. It's very hard to take that kind of a load. Now, I'm not saying he's going to be Le'Veon Bell or David and take that kind of a workload where basically the entire offense revolves around some of those players. But he's going to have to take... I mean, the man, he rushed 25 times last game. So he's going to have to prove that he's a durable guy. And does that mean necessarily we'll see that this season? Because there's so few games left. I think that'll definitely show us something if he can stay healthy for the remainder of the year. But a 16-game season is a totally different animal. So the only question I have with him is durability. Because Kenyon brings it the man has everything you would want. He's a superhero athlete. I mean, the man is a super freak athlete. He's everything that you want. He's got great vision. He understands pass protection. He does everything well. And so obviously he does a lot of things great. So the only thing I have with him is, for the long-term deal, for the long haul, is can he stay healthy for a 16-game season? And I don't know, because that has not been the case for his entire career. It's something definitely. I mean, obviously, if you invest in that, this guy is our guy moving forward. You obviously want him to be on the field. And the second question is, if we win out, what chances do we have of making the playoffs? If we win out, the Raiders are 6-6. The Chargers are 6-6. The Chiefs are 6-6. Obviously, the Ravens currently hold the final playoff spot. It's very slim, and I'm going to be completely honest with you guys. It's very doubtful. But obviously, we can control our own destiny. If we win out, we do put ourselves in and obviously in a very good situation, because I do think it is going to be 9-7 that gets the wild card round. If it's a 10-win team, I would be surprised, but I do think it will be 9 games, depending on who it is. It could, who knows? But we'll see. It's very doubtful, but I think, again, for the culture of this franchise, for moving forward, to finish the game strong and finish with a winning record would be huge for the team. It would be huge for the team. Miami Football Fanatic, he says, young guy stepping up, awesome to see. Kenyon Drake definitely looks the part of a 3-down back. There's never been a question of whether he could do it or not. It's just the durability. And he's just got to be durable, and he's got to be available for his team week in and week out. And that is a skill. That is a skill. I think most Dolphins fans at this point would cut off their left toe. They would do anything at this point to see Tannehill on the field, and we took that for granted when he was here. When he was constantly getting back up for taking vicious hits. It's a skill in the NFL to be durable. Axel says, Skax, were you surprised with Xavier and Phillips' performance? No, because definitely not Jordan, because I've seen Jordan do it, and he's been very inconsistent his entire career. But I've seen Jordan do it from time to time, and I think we all have. But if he could do it on a consistent basis, because he's another guy that has the talent. He just, mentally sometimes checks out. And Xavier, was I surprised? No, because one thing about Xavier is he keeps at it. And a playing the cornerback position is requires a mentally tough human being, because your ego is going to get checked at the door when AJ Green pulls a double move on you, and now you're on YouTube and if the face of NFL.com with your ankles getting shattered. It's a very mentally, you have to be mentally tough to do it, and I think Xavier he has the talent to be a number 1 corner, and he's also he's a great competitor from everything we've seen with interviews with him, and how Adam Gase talks about him, and how great of a competitor that obviously Adam says that he is. So I'm very confident in Xavier having a strong finish. Trey MC says, what's the sign that he says he says, what Matt Burke has stepped up his defensive coaching against his former defensive coach? No, I think it was just mostly the team playing together and executing what is called, and playing as a unit, and not doing stupid things like, there was a couple bad calls there that we committed, and some of them, again, were ticky-tacky, but some of the stuff we have to clean up. We just played a clean football game that we haven't done in a long time, a very long time. Again, when you look at some of the worst losses of the season, in my opinion, the Buccaneers loss was the worst. How bad would we love to have that game back at this point in time? That was huge, but we shouldn't have lost to that team. We really, really shouldn't have lost. If it wasn't for penalties, for touchdowns literally being called back, a bad safety call, points literally been taken off the board, we would have won that game. So a lot of these games we've been beating ourselves. So it was just really nice to see us play clean football. The Republic fences, we're 5-7. Our next games are Patriots, Bills, Chiefs, Bills. What's the direction do you think we should take? Win them all. Win them all. For everything that I've talked about so far this podcast, it's so important to what Adam Gase is trying to do. You got to understand, he was inheriting an organization and a franchise that hasn't known how to win. Since Stephen Ross took over the team, we haven't done anything. He took the organization to the playoffs his first season as the Dolphins head coach. For all the dysfunctionality, all the stuff that we went through with Joe Philbin, all the craziness between Bullygate and the players not looking at Joe Philbin as really a leader, all of that stuff. For Adam Gase to inherit all of those players and turn them into what he did, and bring them to the playoffs, that was tremendous. And again, I think it would be a huge deal if we had a second consecutive winning season. I want to know when the last time we did that was. because obviously in the Tannehill era, we've had a lot of 8-8 teams. Tannehill obviously only had one winning season, and that's when Adam Gase got here. So it would be really nice to have a second consecutive winning season. Colin Klein, and that's the direction I think we should take. Colin Klein, he says, do you think Miami can end Brady's career with a sack fest from the D-line on Monday night? Charles Harris better throttle him. Yeah, I think our pass rushers can get out. We hit Brady a lot up in Gillette, and I think our pass rush really got going against the Broncos. We've been a pretty good pass rush at home. So I think that will continue, especially with the crowd noise. This question comes from, I cannot see. I'm gonna call him HD. He says, "Why is Parker so bad lately?" Question mark. For everything that I've talked about, man, it's frustrating. It's frustrating. JJ the Boss 14, he says, if they don't win against New England, should the Dolphins consider tanking? I mean, oh my God, tanking. I really like Minka Fitzpatrick, Quentin Nelson, and I don't find Josh Rosen and Josh Allen or Sam Darnold or Saquon Barkley. You don't like them, or is that what you're saying? We don't make the playoffs and miss out on all the... Oh, okay, I see what you're saying. On all these guys, I think we would really regret it. No, and again, I think the problems with this team are very minor, and I don't think you need a top 5 pick to fix some of those. The Dill Pickle says, do you think we can make a run and sneak into the playoffs? I don't think we can make... It's going to be very hard to make the playoffs, but, I think finishing strong is very important. Jacob B says, bad day for... this question comes from the Gamer12345. He says, what do you think is the best team in both AFC and NFC? The best team in the AFC is the Pittsburgh Steelers, and the best team in the NFC is the Minnesota Vikings. I think those are the two best teams in the league right now. I think the Steelers have been playing down to their competition all year long. They're waiting to play New England, and I think that's when we'll see what the Steelers actually are. And that great unknown is the only reason I put them at number 1, because I don't know what the best Steeler team looks like yet, and that's crazy because they've been winning a lot. So whatever the best Steelers team looks like is going to be very fascinating when they play New England. So that's why I have them in the NFC. The Vikings are just a dominant defense. They just dominate folks, and they have a great run game to complement it, and they have a quarterback that doesn't turn the ball over. So that's a great recipe for success right there. This question comes from the Gamer 1245. He says, "Is it possible to make the playoffs because it seems like the Ravens could run the table?" Yeah, that's going to be the biggest obstacle ahead, and that's probably what's going to keep us out of the playoffs. But again, regardless of if we make it or not, obviously that would be awesome if we did, if we made January football. But if we don't, I don't care. If we somehow salvage the season and finish strong, I think that'll make us all feel pretty dang good. Let's see here. This question comes from the Gamer1245. He says, "Why do you like Luke Falk? He has been benched in like 3 games this year. Why do I lose? I don't know. It's something about him. When I watch most of these guys like Baker Mayfield, I think some of these guys just have so many question marks that they need to answer. Like Josh Rosen, I could see being a good quarterback in the NFL. Sam Darnold, I could see it happening because they don't rely on their athleticism like some of the other guys do, like Lamar Jackson and Baker Mayfield. Same thing with Luke. He shows great poise in the pocket. I mean, tremendous poise. He throws with great anticipation, great accuracy down the football field. I mean, really great ball placement. And that's the stuff that I look for in an NFL quarterback. Not fazed by blitzes, not fazed by people trying to grab him all around him from every angle, and still being able to step up in there and make a great throw. Granted, Tannehill is also good at that. Everybody's like, oh, he's got terrible pocket presence. Listen, I'm not going to sit here and argue about if Tannehill has bad pocket presence or not. That's a totally different argument. But one thing you can say about him is Tannehill really has great poise, and he's got great mechanics. He steps up into the pocket or stands tall into the pocket, and makes a throw downfield regardless. So many times if you look at Tannehill's, you don't even have to look at tape or film or whatever. Just look at highlights. Just go back and look at some of the throws that he's been able to make. The greatest example of him showing poise last season was one of the bigger throws of the year when he threw to Kenny Stills to win against the Chargers last season, when he was basically being taken down and he just let the ball go and threw a beautiful ball. So that's what I look for in quarterbacks is poise and being able to throw an accurate football with limited space. And I think that Luke Falk has that, and that's what I think can help him develop into something pretty good in the NFL. Because he already has those things. You don't have to teach him that, and you have to teach. I feel like you have to teach that to Baker Mayfield to show poise and not have to run around all the time and make plays with his feet. That's a huge part of his game. Same thing with Lamar Jackson. That's a huge part of his game is making plays with his feet. If you can make plays standing within the pocket, and you already have some of those things installed, then you down the line you can be a Super Bowl caliber quarterback. Just depending on all the other, what organization are you drafted in, what kind of mentality do you have, what kind of leader are you, all of those things come with it, but those I think are the basis in the foundation of a great quarterback, are those things. So yeah, that's why I like Luke Falk. Alright, that has been the podcast for this week. Let me know what you guys think down in the comment section below, and I am Skagster1083, and I will see you guys in the next one.